The first day of school for this girl was not without its difficulties. On the way to school, she accidentally spilled water on the person next to her. When she entered the classroom, she was introducing herself when the sign fell down. Even when she sat down at her desk, the chair broke as if to chase her away. This unlucky and somewhat clumsy girl was named Yulan. Although the first day of school was a bit difficult, in return, Yulan was assigned to sit next to the class president, who was both handsome and the best student in the class. When she arrived at her desk, Yulan immediately recognized that her deskmate was the male student she had met in the morning. At that time, because she saw that the class president's bike had an empty seat, Yulan planned to ask him to ride with her for a while to school, but at that moment, Yulan was clumsy and spilled water on the person next to her. As a result, she caused trouble for the person next to her, and she couldn't even ride with her to school. At recess, the class monitor distributed exercise books to the whole class. However, Yulan was the only one who received the book printed upside down. After class, while she was filling out information in the principal's office, a classmate suddenly ran in and quickly retrieved the confiscated comic book from the bookshelf. At that moment, the little robot that the principal loved so much suddenly fell to the floor. Witnessing the incident, the other classmate was scared and ran away. Yulan was completely bewildered and did not understand what was going on. However, ironically, she was unjustly punished by the teacher. As a result, on the first day of school, Yulan encountered unforgettable bad luck. After school, the blonde girl decided to go watch the basketball game to conveniently look at the male god. However, she was busy cleaning when she saw Yulan was bewildered because she was punished by the homeroom teacher. The blonde girl immediately seized the opportunity. She asked Yulan to help her clean with the excuse that she was extremely busy. Because Yulan was free and had nothing to do, she nodded in agreement. She was completely unaware that the other classmate actually just wanted to skip work to go look at boys while she stayed in class. While Yulan cleaned the classroom with a heavy heart, the blonde girl outside was cheering for the boys enthusiastically. A moment later, Yulan was sitting in class writing a self-criticism when she suddenly heard a noise behind her. When she turned around, class monitor Yibai had appeared. Not only that, Yibai also took the notebook that Yulan was writing in the middle of. She discovered that it was actually Yibai's notebook. At that moment, Yulan felt very unlucky. She had just been unjustly punished by the teacher, and Yibai had also scolded her for being an idiot. When he left, Yulan hurriedly chased after him, grabbed Yibai's hand tightly, and laughed as if life had just brought her joy. That smile made her look like a really silly girl. In Yulan's mind, she still thought that she looked as cool as a heroine. However, Yibai's straightforward words woke her up from that illusion. Yulan was so embarrassed that she didn't know how to hide her clumsiness. The next day, Yulan was still feeling depressed about having to hand in her self-criticism. The blonde girl stepped forward to comfort Yulan, promising that she would definitely find the real culprit. She was also determined to make sure that the person received the appropriate punishment. At that moment, the real culprit also entered the classroom. When he heard the blonde girl's words, he immediately felt anxious and could only quietly return to his seat. Unexpectedly, he still had the courage to turn around and ask Yulan. He also affirmed that he believed that Yulan was not the one who had damaged the principal's beloved robot. Yibai quickly understood the problem. After hearing what he said, he began to hint to the blonde girl that the real culprit was sitting right in front of him. Receiving the signal, the blonde girl immediately stepped forward to question him. At first, he pretended not to understand, but after being severely threatened by the blonde girl, he could not keep calm. In the end, he was forced to admit his mistake. Of course, he also turned to apologize to Yulan for his mistakes. However, the blonde girl did not accept a mere apology. She insisted that he go to the principal to confess the whole truth. Having no other choice, he obediently followed. After school, he was punished by the principal to jump around the schoolyard and then was assigned to clean the toilets. Although he tried to act pitiful in hopes of being spared, he still didn't get any results. At class time, the teacher happily congratulated Yibai for winning second place in the provincial robot invention competition. Not only that, Yibai was also the top student in the class in the recent exam. The whole class was full of admiration for Yibai, completely opposite to the boy sitting at the same table. Yulan was originally a student with poor academic performance. When she received the results, she felt bewildered and surprised, as if she couldn't believe the numbers in front of her eyes. After class, Yulan's mood was still heavy, like a deflated balloon. At this time, Chinka, the student sitting next to her, gently comforted Yulan. Not only that, Chinka also took the opportunity to reveal that the male god Fan, whom Yulan had secretly admired for a long time, was the famous student in the grade. Then she quickly pulled Yulan to the front of Fang's classroom and asked her to help her get an autograph. off. Yulan was naive and easily swayed. After being praised by Chinka for a few sentences, she decided to run to the classroom door to ask for Fang's autograph. Seeing Yulan's innocent and adorable appearance, Fang agreed to sign. Both Yulan and Chinka were extremely happy after that moment. In the next class, the teacher handed out the test. Yulan was surprised to realize that the low score on the paper was not hers. However, no matter how hard she tried to find out, she still could not find out who had swapped the test. During the whole class that day, Yulan was sad and depressed. At the end of the class, Chinka saw that his friend was still sad, so he came up with a plan to help Yulan find the real test. That night, Yulan tiptoed to the office as planned. When she was trying to open the window to get in, she suddenly saw Yi Bai passing by. Yulan immediately begged Yi Bai to keep this a secret out of respect for their deskmate friendship, explaining that she just wanted to find the real test paper. Hearing this, Yi Bai did not say anything more. While Yulan was still struggling, Yi Bai took the key from his pocket and gently opened the office door. Soon after, the two searched together. Just as they discovered that Zhang was the one who swapped the test, the school security guards suddenly came to check. Panicked, Yulan and Yi Bai immediately hid in a corner of the room, holding their breath, not daring to make a sound. While the security guard was distracted, the two quickly pulled each other and ran out of the school. When they returned home, while studying, Yi Bai suddenly remembered Yulan. He had a feeling that her face was very familiar, as if he had seen it somewhere before. Yi Bai suddenly opened the diary and reminisced about his childhood friend. The next morning, Yulan was determined to find Zhang to question him about the swapping of the test. However, Zhang denied it, which made Yulan extremely angry, but there was nothing he could do. At recess, Yulan was about to tell the homeroom teacher when she unexpectedly saw Zhang also there. At that moment, Yulan saw Zhang being harshly scolded by the homeroom teacher for her poor academic performance. Feeling reluctant, she turned around and left. A moment later, she unexpectedly met Zhang, who had been waiting for her. Zhang bowed his head in apology and earnestly asked Yulan for forgiveness, at the same time confessing that she did so because she was afraid that her father would be angry when she learned of her poor grades. With a kind heart, Yulan quickly forgave Zhang and let the matter go. On the way back home, Yulan's heart was still shaken by the matter of her poor grades. Her sadness became even heavier when her deskmate, after having his fortune told, said bad things about her. When she saw Yi Bai walking in the distance, Yulan hurriedly ran over and asked him if she was really like what the other person had said. However, Yi Bai bluntly scolded Yulan for being a foolish girl, for being too gullible. Then the two started arguing like cats and dogs over nothing. Yulan finally left in anger because she couldn't stand Yi Bai's stubbornness. The next day, Yi Bai went shopping with Yulan to prepare for the class. While Yulan's still busy wrapping the gifts, a girl came up and asked her to hang the flag up. Yulan tried hard, but because the flag was hung too high, she still couldn't keep her balance and suddenly fell backwards. Luckily, Yi Bai ran over in time to help her. However, because his hands were skinny and full of bones, Yulan's back still hurt. To make up for it, Yi Bai promised to help her solve the problem at the parent-teacher meeting. Hearing this, Yulan's mood completely changed. She immediately thanked Yi Bai and was extremely excited. The next day, after the parent-teacher meeting ended, Yulan waited for Yi Bai in the garage. Then the two of them rode their bikes together to visit Yulan's aunt. On the way, they had to climb a steep slope that made Yi Bai so tired that she was sweating. Yulan looked at the scene and felt as if even her ancestors were witnessing Yi Bai's perseverance. Out of pity for him, Yulan got out of the carriage to help push. Thanks to that, the two finally arrived at Yulan's grandmother's house. Here, Yi Bai calmly talked about his deskmate's study situation. Although she knew Yi Bai was telling the truth, his frankness made Yulan blush with embarrassment. Then, the two of them entered Yulan's room. Looking around the room, Yi Bai realized that Yulan had a special passion for astronomy. He laughed and affirmed that she was born in the year of the comet, because in this world, it was hard for anyone to be unluckier than her. A moment later, Yulan ran down to the kitchen to get boiled eggs to offer Yi Bai. Although he tried to refuse, she still sat next to him and forced Yi Bai to eat. Normally, Yi Bai had a very good appetite, but this time, he suddenly choked. Yi Bai quickly pointed to signal Yulan to get him some water. However, the silly girl did not understand. Yulan ran behind Yi Bai, constantly elbowing his back to hope that he would stop choking, but to no avail. She then boldly wrapped her arms around Yi Bai and pressed hard against his chest. That clumsy move almost suffocated Yi Bai. Only after a while did he manage to free himself from Yulan's embrace and go get some water to drink. When he regained his breath, Yi Bai suddenly realized that the saying, "Yulan is a comet," was indeed correct. In order to save his life, Yi Bai immediately immediately decided to leave. He secretly thought that if he stayed any longer, he didn't know if he could return home alive. The next morning, when the class was discussing the performance, Chinka suddenly suggested that the whole class should dance pop together. During class activities, the teacher suggested that the whole class should perform the play Swan Lake together. Hearing this, Yulan felt both bewildered and surprised. Because she couldn't choose the female lead, the teacher decided to let the girls draw lots. At this moment, Yulan secretly thought that with her bad luck, the chance of getting the lead role was almost zero. However, life brought Yulan an unexpected shock. With such a low chance of winning, she still drew the fateful lottery. This was also the first time Yulan participated in a play practice. When she saw her classmates acting and dancing, she couldn't help but laugh. During the practice, Yulan misread her lines and even argued back. Although she tried many times, the repeated mistakes made her lose all confidence. Because of too much pressure, Yulan turned to blame her classmates, thinking that they knew she had no talent for acting, but still let her practice. At that moment, Ibai heard the complaint and coldly said that if Yulan didn't want to act, she shouldn't bother everyone. When Ibai scolded her, Yulan felt sad. When it was time to leave, she still stood in a corner resentfully and secretly complained that Ibai always bullied her. At that moment, two classmates accidentally passed by and pushed Yulan into the fountain. Coincidentally, a handsome young man was also walking towards her. He quickly ran over and reached out to pull her up. However, Yulan was so engrossed in looking at his face that she didn't have time to hold his hand. Seeing her bewildered for a long time, the young man took the initiative to reach out and grab Yulan's wrist and pulled her safely to shore. Right after that, when the two were about to leave, Yulan suddenly received a call from Chinka. In fact, it was just a call from a Chinese domestic store, so there was nothing unusual. Although she had been soaked in water for a long time, Yulan still couldn't change her mood. When she met Chinka, she immediately told her how Yibai had bullied her, and she was also eating spicy noodles, making Yulan uncomfortable. Coincidentally, Yibai passed by and saw Yulan wiping her nose. He misunderstood that she was crying miserably. When she got home, Yulan still felt frustrated. She could only vent her anger on the innocent teddy bear in her room. A moment later, her grandmother called Yulan downstairs to eat. During the meal, Yulan, with a sad face, asked her grandmother if she was diligent. Her grandmother calmly replied that except when eating, Yulan never showed any diligence. Hearing this, Yulan was so surprised that she almost fell over. Then, she gently comforted her granddaughter to make her less sad. Meanwhile, Yibai sat at home studying and began to regret saying harsh words to Yulan. He still kept his dignity, while Yulan quietly practiced her lines so as not to be blamed by everyone anymore. The next day, Yibai still maintained a cold attitude, absolutely not talking to Yulan. Seeing this, Yulan angrily lay down on the table. During class, Yibai borrowed a colored marker from Yulan. She reached out her hand to give the pen without looking at Yibai's face. He just silently took the pen without saying another word. During literature class, when Yibai stood up to read, Yulan unconsciously looked up and admired his handsome face. At recess, the two accidentally met at the classroom door. However, neither Yibai nor Yulan would give way, causing the two to stand still and look at each other for quite a while. Finally, after a while of awkwardness, the two separated and walked their separate ways. Soon after, when a classmate brought the script to Yulan, Yibai suddenly ran over and snatched it back. He coldly declared that if Yulan didn't want to act, then he would definitely keep the female lead role. Those blunt words made Yulan feel bitter, like a little owl being angered by someone. When it was time to practice, Yulan took the initiative to buy water for the group. When she gave everyone water, she didn't forget to apologize, because Yulan often forgot her lines. Yulan blushed, then shyly went over to give Yibai a bottle of water. However, to save face, she still tried to act angry for a bit before agreeing. In the next class, Yulan fell asleep again. At first glance, she looked quite cute, but on closer inspection, Yibai realized that she was drooling. Worried that the drool would spread all over the table, he kindly took a tissue and put it under Yulan's chin. When she woke up from her sleep, Yulan was panicking and focused on doing her homework. But from the beginning of the class until now, she had not listened to the lecture, so she could only helplessly stare at the blank page. Yibai felt a bit sorry for her, so he lent her his notebook to copy it, but did not forget to scold her a few times to vent his anger. After school, Yulan tried to stay in class to practice her lines alone. When Yibai passed by, he happened to see the scene and hid to the side to secretly observe. After finishing her practice, Yulan put away her books and prepared to leave. Just as she turned around, Yibai suddenly appeared beside her, making her jump in surprise because she thought someone was following her. Then the two of them left the school together. Because Yulan had forgotten her coat, she felt a little cold. Yibai immediately took off his coat and gently draped it over her shoulders. On the way to the car, Yulan hugged the coat tightly and inhaled the lingering fragrance fragrance. Looking both silly and adorable, she secretly wondered if she would still have the courage to stand in front of everyone on the day of the play. Then, just as the play was about to start, a new classmate ran over to report that Yulan was sitting in the restroom because she was too nervous. Hearing the news, Ibai immediately ran to look for her. When he saw Yulan, he stood still for about 5 seconds, both stunned by her pretty appearance and laughing at her adorable awkwardness. When she stepped onto the stage, Yulan made the whole hall laugh and cry. During the performance, she accidentally kicked a shoe down to the audience. The whole hall burst into laughter at her foolishness, and Yulan blushed so much that she wanted to cry. After the performance, when she just entered the backstage, Yulan was scolded by her friends because they thought she had ruined the whole play. Feeling sad, she ran to a hidden corner and burst into tears. Seeing Yulan in pain, Ibai immediately went to comfort her. However, instead of being gentle, he still teased that this was definitely not the first time Yulan had lost face. That statement made her even angrier. When Yulan's stomach growled with hunger, Ibai immediately said that he would take her to eat chicken soup to nourish her brain. Just hearing the food, Yulan immediately became happy again. At that moment, a classmate suddenly called to announce the good news. Yulan had won the award for Most Outstanding Actress. Ibai couldn't believe her ears, and Yulan jumped up with joy. That night, when she got home, she happily put the small trophy on the shelf. Suddenly, memories flooded back. She remembered the boy who had comforted her with candy, just like Ibai had done that afternoon. On the other side, Ibai also sat there remembering Yulan's silly but adorable appearance. Just thinking about it made the corners of his lips curl up slightly. The next morning, Chinka asked Yulan to go buy a new album from a famous star. However, Yulan had to refuse because she had to save money. Hearing this, Chinka promised to buy it for Yulan, but in return, she had to help prepare a birthday present for the male god Fang. Even though Yulan refused, Chinka still insisted. With no other choice, Yulan reluctantly nodded. When she arrived at the library, Yulan started looking for some books about love letters to help Chinka. At that time, a handsome stranger kept following her. Yulan had accidentally kicked her shoe in the face during a performance. To make up for her mistake, Yulan immediately pulled the guy into the cafeteria, intending to invite him to eat. However, he refused, only coldly saying that he would let Yulan make up for it later and then left. Sure enough, the guy appeared right in front of Yulan's classroom door. He asked Yulan to do all the homework for a subject until the end of the semester to make up for it. Hearing the word homework, Yulan was so panicked that she was speechless. At first, she refused, but under the threat, she finally reluctantly agreed. In return for his cooperation, Hao Tian, the handsome guy's name, took Yulan out to eat dirty skewers. The next day, he was kind enough to return the love letter that she had accidentally forgotten. At recess, Hao Tian came to Yulan's class again, gave her some of her favorite comic books, and conveniently asked for help with her math homework. This time, Yulan immediately shook her head in refusal and went back to class, leaving him standing in the hallway laughing alone. In class, Chinka was endlessly curious, constantly asking who the guy was. Yulan didn't bother to explain, just complaining vaguely and confusingly. Ibai sat next to her and witnessed the scene, feeling that both girls were really childish. During computer class, Chinka enthusiastically showed Yulan the latest photos of the male god Fang. The two immediately screamed and laughed because they had the chance to see a handsome guy. At this moment, Yulan suddenly remembered that she hadn't added Ibai as her friend yet. She turned to ask him to add her as her friend, but he flatly refused. At that moment, Chinka scrolled through Yulan's personal page and found that Hao kept leaving comments. Even Yulan was surprised. Sitting next to her, Ibai listened to the whole story and immediately took the initiative to send a friend request, leaving Yulan unable to understand what he was thinking. Boys are really unpredictable creatures, but Yulan still happily agreed. As a classmate, Yulan originally intended to go to Ibai's personal page to look at him. However, Ibai's personal page was completely blank, just like his name. Not even a single photo. Yulan started to worry again, because her homework was not finished. The next morning when she went to class, she still had not prepared anything. Ibai sat next to her and blamed her for not taking care of her homework, and even accepting to do other people's homework. In the end, Yulan had to beg Ibai to lend her notebook to copy. Of course, he still generously agreed. After she finished copying, Yulan also asked Ibai to help copy Hao Tian's. At first, Ibai refused, but then he was moved and wrote it himself out of pity for his silly friend. Meanwhile, Chinka kept pressuring Yulan to show him the love letter. The two girls were unfortunately caught red-handed by the teacher. He walked over, took the letter, and read it aloud to the class. Yulan and Chinka just wanted to bury themselves. They didn't expect the letter to be so cheesy. The teacher blamed Yulan for only caring about love and neglecting her studies. studies, and even threatened to tell the homeroom teacher. When he asked about the letter, Yi-bai immediately stood up to receive it, saying that it was a letter written to her by a girl from another class. Thanks to that, Yulan escaped. In the end, Yulan and Qin-ka were only punished to stand in the hallway for making noise. After class, both of them tiredly walked back to their seats, still regretting that the letter had been kept. Luckily, Yi-bai asked the teacher to return the letter to them. Qin-ka was happy and said that she would always remember Yi-bai's efforts. In return, Yulan promised to help him write the love letter, but Yi-bai immediately refused because he didn't care about anyone. Right after that, the homeroom teacher announced shocking news. The class would be in charge of the school's sports competition. Not only that, the whole class also had to prepare a very exciting welcoming performance. Before they could protest, the teacher turned and walked away, leaving behind a group of people feeling disheartened. With no other choice, they had to get down to practicing for the performance. The school's annual sports meet had officially begun. In the long jump competition, Hao Tian wanted to improve the class's performance, so he invited another friend to participate. He confidently said that if he won, Yulan would have to agree to one of his requests. Yulan nodded heartily without hesitation. Immediately after, she turned to Yi-bai and promised that if he won first place, she would write a commendation essay for him. After hearing this, Yi-bai felt empowered. In the end, Yi-bai surpassed Hao Tian and won the championship. When the group went to the resting area, they discovered that their seats had been taken by the students of Class A4. The two sides argued fiercely without reaching a conclusion. The boys of Class A4 even stepped forward, intending to cause trouble for Qin-ka and the girls. Fortunately, Mu appeared in time to protect them. The argument ended with Mu being reprimanded again. In the next race, it was a coincidence that the two classes had to run side by side. A girl from Class A4 pushed Mu's classmate down, causing her class to lose. When they returned to class, everyone was angry and discussed going to Class A4 to fight. Fortunately, Yulan stopped them in time. The whole class immediately turned to ask Yi-bai whether they should report the incident or not. Yi-bai insisted that they must report it, but absolutely not use violence. Instead, he suggested that the whole class focus on winning the remaining events as a way to teach their opponent a lesson. Hearing this, everyone was filled with determination. Yulan also boldly volunteered to participate in the long-distance race. Yi-bai originally wanted to stop her, but when he saw the determination in Yulan's eyes, he was helpless and let her participate. During the competition, Yi-bai and Yulan helped their injured classmate to the medical room. The classmate was grateful, grabbed Yi-bai's hand, and asked him to take her back to class. Yi-bai wanted to give it to Yulan, but Yulan quickly said that she had more work to do and ran away. In the end, Yi-bai had no choice but to awkwardly push her hand away and call someone else to help. Meanwhile, Yulan sat outside the stadium, recalling the cheesy confessions of the other girl and feeling bored. At that moment, Hao Tian suddenly walked over and gave her a bottle of Coca-Cola. Just as Yulan was about to take it, Yi-bai appeared. He quickly stuffed a bottle of mineral water into her hand and returned the Coca-Cola to Hao Tian. Yi-bai also reminded Yulan not to drink carbonated water because it would make her feel full. Hearing the reasonable explanation, Yulan obediently nodded in agreement. Then the classic essay that Yulan wrote for Yi-bai was read out in front of the whole school. In fact, this essay was written by Qin-ka. Unexpectedly, Qin-ka described Yi-bai as a green frog. After listening, Yi-bai was so stunned that she didn't know how to react. When the competitions gradually ended, Yulan's class's total score was still 5 points lower than Class A4's. Right now, the only hope was in the final race. But just as Yulan was about to go out onto the field to compete, she suddenly had a severe stomachache. Two girls from Class A4 ran over to tease Yulan, making her angry while preparing for the competition. Yi-bai thoughtfully bent down to tie her shoelaces for Yulan, and then the match officially began. Yulan felt a sharp pain in her stomach, as if she could not bear it any longer. But when she saw her friends cheering enthusiastically, she tried to endure the pain and continued to rush forward. In the end, Yulan brought home second place for the whole class. After the competition, the whole class was praised by the homeroom teacher. When passing by Class A4, the whole group was still full of triumph, as if wanting to show their opponents their defeat. When they returned home, Yulan was taken care of by her grandmother, while Yi-bai did not forget to text her to ask about her situation. For Yulan, there seemed to be nothing happier in this world than that moment. During the chemistry practice, Yulan accidentally burned her hand because she was too clumsy. Yi-bai saw it and immediately treated her wound. By recess, the atmosphere in the classroom had become more relaxed and cheerful. He was still diligently going to get the ointment for her. In the next class, the teacher suddenly announced that the whole class was going on a field trip to the observatory, causing all the students to cheer with excitement. The day started with a cruise. Yulan saw Yi-bai standing alone, so she secretly took a photo of him. Yi-bai noticed and immediately told the owner of the camera. He finally came forward, took Yulan's camera, and took the initiative to take a photo with her. After that, the whole class sang and danced together on the boat, then continued climbing the mountain to the observatory. On the way up the mountain, Yulan saw Yi-bai walking slowly and ran over to tease her. However, she suddenly slipped and almost fell off the cliff. Yi-bai reflexively reached out to save her, but at that moment, a painful memory from the past came back to him, making him stand still and unable to move. Fortunately, Hao Tian ran over in time to pull Yulan to safety. Only when Hao Tian angrily scolded did Yi-bai wake up from his panic. Fear was clearly visible on Yi-bai's face. He only had time to apologize and then hurriedly left, heading straight to the field where the class would camp. Then Yulan was given the task of fetching water. Meanwhile, Chinka played a trick to create an opportunity for the two. She looked worried, went to Yi-bai and wondered why Yulan had gone to fetch water for a long time and had not returned. Perhaps the silly girl had gotten lost. Hearing this, the teacher immediately decided to send Yi-bai to find Yulan. Chinka was so happy that he jumped up because the plan had been a complete success. Yi-bai walked through the forest for a long time and finally found Yulan sleeping under a tree. He immediately approached and teased her, waking her up. After a moment of embarrassment, Yi-bai bowed slightly to apologize to Yulan for leaving her alone in the dangerous moment without being able to catch her. However, Yulan became even more worried when she realized that Yi-bai's complexion was not good at all. Then the two went to find a water source together. With his rich experience, Yi-bai quickly found a small stream. While washing vegetables, Yulan accidentally dropped the vegetables into the stream. She quickly bent down to grab the vegetable, but unfortunately fell headfirst into the water. Seeing this, Yi-bai immediately waded in to help her up. He was both worried and scolded Yulan for being so clumsy and unlucky that she had affected others. At this time, Yulan was drenched like a drowned rat, and her leg was also injured. Yi-bai had no choice but to take off his coat and cover her to keep her warm. Seeing that Yulan could not walk on her own, he decided to carry her back to the camp, his heart full of worry. In the afternoon, the whole class ate and drank together, laughing and joking carefreely. In the evening, Yulan and her friends were sitting and chatting when the teacher suddenly came over and gave each of them a worksheet. This time the task was to observe the starry sky and complete the assigned worksheet. When the group climbed the mountain to watch the stars, Yulan suddenly disappeared, forcing Yi-bai to go back to find her. Meanwhile, Yulan was walking alone when Hao Tian suddenly appeared, scaring her into screaming. Yi-bai heard the scream and immediately ran over. Then the three of them returned to the meeting place together. Only halfway through, the flashlight suddenly ran out of battery. Because Yulan was afraid of the dark, Yi-bai took the initiative to hold her hand and lead her the rest of the way. When the group arrived, the other friends had to wait until their necks were sore. Chinka immediately teased and admired Yulan because she had two handsome bodyguards by her side. Yulan was so shy that she didn't dare to look up at anyone, especially when she heard her friends telling ghost stories, which made her scared and huddle close to Yi-bai. A moment later, the group looked at the starry sky together. When the meteor shower appeared, everyone closed their eyes and made a wish. After the field trip, the whole class returned to school and began the intense review period. At this time, all students had to make an important choice, to follow the natural science or social science. Yulan felt hesitant, so she asked Yi-bai for his opinion. After carefully reviewing her academic record, Yi-bai advised her to choose the social science because it would be a more suitable path. Hearing this, Yulan thought that Yi-bai did not want to keep her by her side. Only then did Yi-bai come to her side. After thinking it over, he analyzed it again and thought that it would be better for Yulan to stay in the natural science class. Hearing this, Yulan's face immediately showed joy. She enthusiastically promised that she would try to get into the top 10 of the class. Yi-bai only frowned slightly when he heard this, doubting in his heart. Seeing this, Yulan quickly changed her goal to top 20 to increase credibility. The next day, while Yulan was helping Yi-bai clean the blackboard, he suddenly appeared, startling her. Yi-bai then gave Yulan an egg to nourish her brain. He also promised that from now on, after school, he would tutor Yulan in science subjects. Not only that, Yi-bai also promised to help her complete all her homework within an hour. He emphasized that from now on, he would personally tutor Yulan after school and required her to complete her homework on time. Being a thoughtful person, Yi-bai also prepared an hourglass so that Yulan could easily keep track of the time accurately in each class. During biology class, the teacher assigned the whole class the task of growing lettuce. After a period of care, Yulan went to visit the plant and discovered that the roots were damaged. Yi-bai saw this and immediately took out a bottle of special medicine produced domestically. With just a few drops, Yulan's vegetable vegetable plant immediately recovered and became green so fast that Yulan had to laugh and compare that this speed was even faster than an ex-lover changing his attitude. Seeing her lettuce plant flourishing, Yulan immediately brought it back to class to make salad to avoid waste. She even did not hesitate to ask Ibai for more plants so that she could have enough to eat. During literature class, the teacher asked the students to write about a person they could not forget. When he heard the topic, Ibai was stunned for a moment. His eyes seemed lost in space. After school, Ibai stayed to tutor Yulan until evening, then drove her home. To create a more romantic atmosphere, Ibai walked his bike beside Yulan, making the journey home a little longer but filled with warmth. Only when he sent Yulan home did Ibai get on his bike and leisurely return. That night, Ibai dreamed of the little girl from back then. In that memory, because he was too young, he could only stand and watch the little girl slip and fall down the cliff without being able to do anything. When he woke up, Ibai sat there in a daze, his eyes red with tears and the endless memories of the little girl. The next morning, the teacher praised Ibai's essay as very good and meaningful and wanted him to read it to the whole class. However, Ibai firmly refused. The whole class was surprised, while Yulan could not hide her curiosity. To Yulan, Ibai was the person she could never forget. She intended to secretly look at his essay, but Ibai suddenly appeared, causing her to quickly put away her book. When Yulan was asked by her friend to hang the board high up, Ibai quickly ran to help. Looking down from his high position, he felt that Yulan's figure was extremely similar to the little girl in his memories of the past. Immediately after, Ibai suddenly felt dizzy and almost fell forward. Luckily, he grabbed the board in time to keep his balance. Yulan immediately did the rest for him. Standing below, Ibai saw her faltering and immediately held her legs to ensure her safety, making Yulan a little embarrassed. A few girls behind him couldn't help but secretly envy her when they saw this scene. After school, Ibai took Yulan home again. This time, he learned his lesson and drove her directly on his familiar bicycle. During the summer break, in order to reduce the burden on his son, Ibai's mother went into his room to help him clean up. When she opened the closet, she discovered an old diary, a lot of candy, and an origami star. After curiously opening the diary, she realized that over the years, Ibai had not been able to let go of the painful memories of that year. Thinking of her son's torment, she couldn't help but burst into tears. Meanwhile, at home, Mu was banned from playing basketball by his father because his academic performance had seriously declined. The two had a heated argument. In a fit of anger, Mui's father slapped him hard and kicked him out of the house. Mui angrily ran to Chinka's house to seek support. Unexpectedly, Chinka was also severely scolded by his father for being in love at a young age. He even intended to use force to deter his daughter. Too angry, Chinka decided to leave home. At dinner that night, his parents advised Ibai that what was past should be past. He needed to learn to let go of the past. However, Ibai did not respond, just quietly stood up and returned to his room. While studying, Ibai accidentally saw Yulan's exercise book in his school bag. Out of curiosity, he opened it and wanted to know who Yulan wrote that he could not forget. It was then that Ibai was shocked to realize that Yulan was his sister's childhood best friend. Soon after, Ibai texted Yulan to ask her to meet her. As soon as they met, Yulan took him to his grandmother's garden. Here, Yulan frankly asked Bai about the person he could not forget. Then, Yulan also decided to share her secret. She confessed that she was blind in the past, but later received her eyes donated by her best friend so that she could see the light. No one expected that her best friend was Yi Bai's deceased sister. The necklace that Yulan always wore was actually a gift that Yi Bai gave her when she was little. Hearing that, Yi Bai also opened up and told Yulan about his childhood trauma. He said that every time he got sick, the scene of not being able to save his sister would replay in his mind, and it was that trauma that caused his hyperactivity to relapse many times. Coincidentally, today is also his and his twin sister's birthday. Yi Bai's sister loved cherry cake when she was alive. Coincidentally, Yulan also loved this kind of cake. She immediately ran out to buy a cake to celebrate Yi Bai's birthday as a way to express her remaining love on behalf of his sister. The summer vacation quickly ended, and the new school year began. This time, Hao Tian was transferred to Yulan's class, which surprised the whole class. Yulan was also stunned when she saw Hao Tian appear. To get acquainted, Hao Tian generously lent Yulan a lot of comics as a small gift. Yulan seemed extremely interested and passionate about those comics. However, Yi Bai was not very pleased. He even confiscated all the comics, making Yulan both angry and resentful, but unable to do anything. In the following days, Yulan always tried hard to complete all the homework assigned by Yi Bai. There were days when she was so so tired that she felt sleepy and just wanted to lie down on the table. On this side, Yulan and Chin-ka were still trying to complete all the homework. Yulan wrote while complaining to Chin-ka that she was assigned too much and could never finish it. While chatting, the two suddenly discovered a person selling baby chickens on the street. Seeing the adorable little chickens, the two girls immediately fell in love and decided to buy 2 of them to take home and play with. The next problem gave them both a headache: where to raise these 2 chickens. Chin-ka quickly thought of bringing them to school so they could look at them every day. As soon as she finished speaking, Yulan nodded in agreement. Unexpectedly, at school, another classmate also brought a chicken. Its chirping sound immediately reached the homeroom teacher's ears. As a result, the other chicken was mercilessly confiscated. Witnessing this scene, Yulan and Chin-ka were extremely confused, worried that their chickens would also suffer the same fate. Hao Tian immediately suggested, "Bring them to my place. It's closer to the school, much safer." The 2 girls happily agreed. During the break, the group sat down to discuss the plan in detail. However, the mischievous chicken suddenly jumped right at Yibai's feet, scaring him to the point of a heart attack. Yibai sternly suggested that Yulan immediately take the 2 chickens somewhere else. Just then, Hao Tian appeared and led the 2 girls and their treasure to his warehouse. After the 2 chickens were settled, the 3 of them returned to the classroom as if nothing had happened. Seeing Yulan and Chin-ka suddenly become close to Hao Tian, both Yibai and Mu were secretly jealous. The 2 boys were even so angry that they wanted to deal with the 2 innocent chickens to relieve their anger. In the end, to vent their anger, they decided to go straight to the game shop. Unfortunately, there, Mu and Yibai were harassed by a group of strange young men. When the situation seemed dangerous, Hao Tian suddenly appeared at the right time. Fortunately, the shop owner quickly intervened, thanks to which the group escaped trouble. Hao Tian chased the thugs away, then turned to ask Yibai in surprise, because he did not think he was the one who came to the game shop to relieve stress. After that, Hao Tian even suggested a solo match to determine who was better. But in reality, facing Yibai's big hand skills, Hao Tian was completely no match. The next day, Yulan and Chin-ka were still busy taking care of the 2 chickens. Yibai, who was sitting nearby, immediately spoke sarcastically, saying that he didn't even have time to read, yet he was spending his energy raising chickens. Yulan was surprised when she heard this and asked why Yibai was so afraid of chickens. Unexpectedly, Yibai answered seriously that he was allergic to all animals with beaks. After school, the 2 girls happily ran to visit the chicken, but suddenly discovered that there was only one left. They frantically searched everywhere, but still couldn't find it, so they quickly called Hao Tian to help. The 3 of them split up and searched every corner. At that moment, the missing chicken ran straight towards Yibai. He screamed in panic, forcing Yulan to run to pick up the chicken immediately. In the end, the loser was Yibai. He still had to reluctantly hold the little chicken in his arms, despite his red skin from an allergic reaction. The next day, the group of thugs came to Hao Tian's warehouse. Because they knew he often visited this place, they broke the door to get in and sat in ambush, waiting for him to appear. However, they waited for a long time but still didn't see Hao Tian anywhere. Finally, they sent someone to the school to look for him. When he arrived, he happened to meet Yibai. He asked Yibai to call Hao Tian to the warehouse, then hurried back. Back in class, Yibai suddenly remembered that Yulan and Chin-ka would be coming to the warehouse today. Feeling that something was wrong, Yibai immediately pulled Mu along to check. At the warehouse, the group of thugs heard the noise and rushed out the door. When Yulan and Chin-ka just stepped inside, they quickly restrained them both. Fortunately, Hao Tian arrived in time to save his friend. He was determined to confront the thugs head-on. Not long after, Yibai and Mu also ran over. Together they fought back. However, Hao Tian was unfortunately beaten down by one of them with a stick. The group panicked and took him to the hospital for first aid. When they were about to leave, they happened to meet the homeroom teacher, who was also there. Fortunately, Mu stood in the way, helping the group escape safely. The homeroom teacher saw the wound on Mu's hand and suspected that he had participated in the fight, but did not have time to deal with it. The next morning, the homeroom teacher announced that someone had seen students in the school gathering to fight. He knew it was Mue, so he went into the classroom to question him. When Hao Tian and Yibai were about to stand up and admit their guilt, Mu took the initiative to say that he was the only one involved. Hearing this, the teacher immediately pulled Mu out to punish and scold him severely. At that moment, Hao Tian, Yibai, and Chin-ka ran over to admit their mistakes. After learning the truth, the teacher only lightly scolded them, then punished the group to clean up. The group laughed and joked while doing it until late afternoon. The next day, Mu was unlucky again when the homeroom teacher called the parents directly to school, while the others were only called to remind them. After the meeting, Mu's father scolded his son right in front of the schoolyard. Chin-ka wanted to step forward to help her friend out of the awkward situation. But Hao Tian stopped her. In the end, Yi Bai stepped forward and skillfully defended Mu. In the afternoon, the homeroom teacher personally went to find the group of students who were bullying their friends. He taught them a lesson that scared them all away. The next day, everything continued as usual. Hao Tian again tricked Yi Bai into playing checkers. Yi Bai was jealous and threw away Hao Tian's paper. Then he turned around and asked Yulan to play with him. Yulan was angry because she couldn't win a single game, so she insisted on playing more. However, at that moment, the homeroom teacher suddenly appeared behind her, leaving her unable to react. In the end, the silly girl still had to be punished by cleaning the toilet. After school, Yulan blamed Yi Bai for getting her punished and asked him to stay and clean up with her. Yi Bai quickly made an excuse to go to extra classes and ran off, leaving Yulan alone. She sang while cleaning and even danced on the table, forgetting that she was holding a broom. Suddenly, Yulan slipped and fell to the floor, her whole body aching. Yi Bai, who was standing outside, saw her and ran in to help her up, then escorted her to the bus stop. The next morning, the light bulb in the classroom suddenly broke. Because the classroom was too dark, the teacher quickly turned on the switch, but unexpectedly, the light bulb exploded. The students below were scared and screamed. In that chaotic moment, Yi Bai hurriedly hugged Yulan, to the point that his shirt button also came off. That night, Yulan hugged that button, looking at it and smiling foolishly. The next day, Yi Bai was assigned to receive Xue Er, a girl who had just returned from abroad. During the whole class, Yulan was so nervous that she couldn't concentrate. During recess, she heard her friends whispering that Yi Bai and Xue Er were best friends. Yulan immediately pulled Qingka to a corner to watch from afar. At lunchtime, she was still busy looking at her love rival, her heart burning with anxiety. After that, Xue Er was led to the classroom by the teacher. As soon as she appeared, the girl walked up to Yi Bai, gave him a set of study materials, and calmly sat down in Yulan's seat. Yulan angrily chased Xue Er out. After school, Xue Er invited Yi Bai to study English, which made Yulan even sadder. That night, she was in no mood to study. During the math class, despite the teacher's enthusiastic lecture, Yulan still fell asleep on the table. The teacher got angry and scolded her harshly, then assigned small exercises for the students to come to the board one by one. Yulan was worried, secretly praying that she wouldn't be called on, but the more she tried to avoid it, the more attention she received. As a result, Yulan and Xue Er were both called on. On the podium, Xue Er quickly finished the exercises, while Yulan stood there awkwardly, unable to write anything. The math teacher angrily scolded her on the spot, then asked her to stay in the office to talk privately. There, Yulan was scolded to the point that she just wanted to find a hole to hide in. After leaving the office, Yulan sat sadly under a tree and confided in Qingka. She felt that she and Yi Bai were like stars in the daytime, completely different from each other. Qingka got goosebumps after hearing this, but still stayed by her side to comfort her. In the end, the two girls sang together, finding joy in simple moments. Yulan and Qingka then went to the mall to buy clothes, then stopped by the hair salon. Returning home, Yulan saw her grandmother talking to her mother. She immediately sat timidly in a corner, quietly listening to the conversation without daring to approach. Only when her grandmother hung up did Yulan come out to say a quick hello before dragging her tired steps upstairs. In the familiar room, Yulan sat quietly looking at the family photo that she had carefully kept. At that moment, her phone rang. Yi Bai texted her to make an appointment for tutoring. Yulan quickly arrived at the meeting place, and Yi Bai was surprised to see her new appearance. He only gave her a perfunctory compliment, but it was enough to make her happy all day. The two of them went to a coffee shop together to study. However, Yulan studied less and worried more about eating. She even enthusiastically fed Yi Bai a piece. Before he could refuse, the piece of cake was stuffed straight into his mouth. Not stopping there, Yulan also set a condition. If she finished all her homework, Yi Bai had to buy her a cherry cake. I don't know if the girl was poisoned by the pigworm or not, but she could eat and drink without getting bored. The next day, the school held a knowledge competition. As soon as she heard that the prize was food, Yulan immediately signed up enthusiastically, hoping to get free food. During the homeroom teacher's class, Qingka quickly signed up to compete to help her friend. The teacher immediately agreed to allow Xue Er and Qingka to join Yulan. At lunchtime that day, Xue Er saw Yi Bai's concern for Yulan and became jealous. Yulan, on the other hand, had more motivation to win. When she learned that Yi Bai was the one who set the question questions, Yulan immediately brought a bottle of milk to bribe her, hoping to see the test in advance. Yi-bai only gave her a few reference questions, but Yulan happily gave her another bottle. However, when she realized that those were just a few small questions out of thousands of questions in the test set, Yulan immediately became angry and demanded back both bottles of milk she had given Yi-bai. In the following days, she studied so hard that her friends were surprised. Hao Tian even gave Yulan a thick book, making her wonder when she would be able to finish all that homework. The competition finally started. Yulan was nervous, but answered almost all the questions. Xue Er was so excellent that she didn't make any mistakes. When the score was tied, Yi-bai asked a supplementary question. Unexpectedly, the question was in the field of music, one of Yulan's strengths. She quickly gave the correct answer and won in front of the whole class. That day after the small competition, Yulan happily ran to Yi-bai and promised that she wouldn't let him down. She would be the one to answer all the questions, and Yi-bai would just sit on the side and ring the bell for her. Seeing Yulan so excited, Yi-bai immediately asked her real purpose in participating in the Qinka competition. Standing next to her, Qinka quickly said that Yulan only wanted to participate so that she could eat with Yi-bai. On the day of the competition, Yulan clumsily forgot to bring her name tag. Luckily, Yi-bai brought his tag, so the two of them were able to smoothly enter the competition field. The competition was extremely dramatic. Most of the questions were answered by Yi-bai. In the last question, Yulan hurriedly pressed the bell, but Yi-bai did not know the answer. With only a few seconds left, Yulan randomly said her lucky number and unexpectedly won. However, the joy did not last long. The next day, Yulan accidentally lost 2 free buffet tickets. All her efforts were in vain, making her extremely sad. When Yi-bai returned home, his father invited him to eat buffet. Thinking of Yulan, he cooked 2 plates of egg fried rice to exchange for 2 tickets from his father. The next day, Yi-bai deliberately left the 2 tickets under the grass. When the date came, Yulan confessed that she had dropped her free meal ticket. Yi-bai then pointed to the grass where 2 tickets were lying. Yulan was as happy as a child who had just picked up a gift. The night before the meal, Yulan had to ask Qinka to help her choose a dress, and he did not forget to comfort her to ease her nervousness. The next day, Yulan and Yi-bai went to the restaurant. She was excited to get the shrimp, but when it was her turn, she only found 1 shell left. She was truly unlucky. Seeing this, Yi-bai immediately went to get her a whole lobster, making Yulan happy again. After that, the teacher let the whole class draw lots to change seats. Yulan was heartbroken that she could no longer sit with Yi-bai. Luckily, her new deskmate was Qinka, so her sadness was somewhat relieved. When she returned to her old seat, Yulan even said goodbye to Yi-bai, as if they were about to part ways forever. She was sad because she would no longer have Yi-bai tutoring her after school hours. Seeing this, Yi-bai promised that he would still help her with her homework after school hours and on holidays. Hearing this promise, Yulan became happy again. She immediately gave Yi-bai a snake figurine as a souvenir and asked him for a parting gift. Yi-bai didn't know what to give her, so he ended up giving her a pen that was almost out of ink. During gym class, the teacher announced that the next class would be swimming. The whole class cheered with excitement upon hearing this. Yulan had also prepared a brand new swimsuit. However, the first time she wore it, it tore, making her feel so regretful. In the end, Yulan had to make an excuse that her aunt was visiting so that she wouldn't have to go into the pool. After class, Yulan decided to go to the store to return the poor quality swimsuit. Knowing this, Yi-bai secretly prepared a better quality swimsuit for Yulan. The next day, Yi-bai shyly pulled Yulan aside and gave her the swimsuit, saying that his mother bought it, but it was too tight. Hearing this, Yulan was overjoyed, thinking that she had made a big profit. During gym class, Yulan stood in front of the mirror, admiring the swimsuit that Yi-bai had given her, until Qinka had to drag it away. Qinka knew that Yi-bai was just using it as an excuse to give her a gift, but he couldn't bear to tell the truth. When arriving at the swimming pool, Yulan shyly hid herself and secretly looked at Yi-bai. Then she felt self-conscious because of her short legs. At that moment, Hao Tian pulled her down to the shore to teach her how to swim. Yi-bai stood on the shore and saw the two of them playing, and he couldn't help but feel jealous. After class, Hao Tian also gave Yulan a box of yogurt, which made Yi-bai even more upset. When school was over, Yi-bai still tutored Yulan in her studies. Unexpectedly, Yulan discovered a box of yogurt in her desk drawer and asked for information. Yi-bai turned to tease her, making her confused and not understand anything. In the end, the box of yogurt still fell into Yulan's hands. The next day, the school held a charity fair to help poor students overcome difficulties. When she got home, Yulan thought for a long time about what to sell. Her grandmother couldn't help but laugh when she saw her dancing and fumbling. After trying the glutinous rice balls that her grandmother cooked, Yulan suddenly had the idea of bringing this dish to the fair. The next day, Yi-bai was selling some old books at the class booth. Chin-ka immediately mocked that no one wanted to buy them. But then, two girls came running up and offered double the price just to get an autograph. Yi-bai happily agreed, making Chin-ka standing next to him mad with anger. Meanwhile, Yu-lan was in charge of selling glutinous rice balls. Hao Tian immediately ran over to buy them, but after tasting them, he immediately ran away. Chin-ka curiously took one to taste. The taste was no different from poison. Fortunately, no one bought it yet. At this time, Yu-lan was busy in the bathroom. Suddenly, Chin-ka received a call saying that Yi-bai was going to buy Yu-lan's sticky rice balls. In a hurry, Chin-ka accidentally bumped into Xue Er and dropped her music box. With no other choice, she left her most precious necklace as collateral and promised Xue Er that Hao Tian would help her redeem it later. When Chin-ka arrived at the booth, Xue Er quickly showed off the necklace to Yi-bai. Yi-bai saw it and immediately expressed his desire to buy it back. Hao Tian, wanting to get the necklace back for Chin-ka, immediately offered a higher price. However, Yi-bai was not willing to give in. Seeing the tense bidding between the two, the teacher stepped in and suggested that the necklace's owner decide whether to sell it or not. Yi-bai did not hesitate, immediately took out 500,000 to buy the necklace and left. When returning to class, Hao Tian blocked Yi-bai's way, forcing him to sell it again. However, Yi-bai firmly refused. Hao Tian angrily grabbed Yi-bai's collar but still couldn't stop him from leaving, and in the end, he could only vent his anger on a nearby table. When he got home, Yi-bai sat there, looking at the necklace he had given Yu-lan when they were young, feeling so angry that he almost got sick. It was an extremely precious item to both of them, yet Yu-lan had the audacity to auction it off. When Yu-lan texted him, Yi-bai deliberately did not reply. After Yi-bai's mother learned that her son had spent 500 yuan on something, she wanted to see for herself what it was. Yi-bai took out the necklace and told her that he had bought it from Yu-lan, who had received a cornea donation from his younger sister. Meanwhile, at home, Yu-lan worked hard to make more glutinous rice balls in the hope of winning Yi-bai's favor. The next morning, Yu-lan went to the parking lot very early, hoping to flatter Yi-bai to get the necklace back. However, Yi-bai coldly refused. During physical education class, the teacher had the whole class practice hurdle jumping. After Yi-bai demonstrated, the teacher called on the girls. The whole class pushed Yu-lan to go first. Because she was so worried, Yu-lan accidentally hit her foot on the fence and ended up in the infirmary. The two boys immediately fought to take Yu-lan away. Yu-lan was confused and asked Chin-ka to go with her. However, Yi-bai still wanted to take care of her himself, so he came up with a lame excuse to send Chin-ka away first. Surprised, Yu-lan wondered why Yi-bai was behaving like that. Yi-bai desperately wanted to keep the necklace, but he still didn't understand why Yu-lan let Hao Tian take the item she treasured the most. When he learned that the necklace was originally Hao Tian's idea to auction it, Yi-bai felt relieved. Finally, Yi-bai decided to return the necklace to Yu-lan. She was so happy that she jumped up and down. In the medical room, Yi-bai also kindly helped Yu-lan apply medicine. A moment later, Hao Tian asked Yi-bai to bring medicine and water to Yu-lan, although he didn't like it, but just when he was thirsty. Later, in computer class, Yu-lan turned to Chin-ka and asked if she knew why she always liked computer class the most. Chin-ka answered without thinking that it was definitely because in this class, Yu-lan was sitting next to Yi-bai. Hearing that, Yu-lan immediately burst into a silly laugh. Just then, Hao Tian suddenly texted him that he wanted to take Yu-lan home. Yi-bai, who was sitting next to him, saw the text message and suddenly felt a little jealous. Yu-lan turned around to tell the teacher that she wanted to take a day off from cleaning duty today, but before she could say anything, Yi-bai quickly said that he would take her home himself. Yu-lan quickly refused after hearing this because she only wanted to take a day off from cleaning duty, not to ask him to take her home. Hearing this, Yi-bai blushed in embarrassment and turned away without saying anything more. After school, Yi-bai saw Yu-lan walking alone. He immediately rode his bike to chase after her to take her home. On the way, when he saw Yu-lan coughing, Yi-bai worriedly told her to drink more warm water and wear more clothes to avoid catching a cold. The next day, just as Yi-bai worried, Yu-lan caught a cold and kept coughing. As soon as he saw her, Yi-bai immediately closed the windshield and hurriedly ran to buy medicine for her. Sitting on one side, Chin-ka watched the scene and felt jealous. After school, Yi-bai quietly followed Yu-lan all the way to the library. Yi-bai's mother also wanted to see her child's eyes, but she didn't have the courage to meet Yu-lan alone, so she could only stand quietly from afar and watch. When she returned home, Yu-lan sat chatting with Chin-ka. Because Yu-lan's birthday was coming, Chin-ka was curious to know who she wanted to celebrate her birthday with. Looking at Yu-lan's shy and embarrassed appearance, Chin-ka had already guessed the answer. She then made a joke of calling to inform everyone of Yu-lan's birthday. On the surface, Yi-bai seemed indifferent, not caring at all, but once he turned away, he quietly saved saved her birthday in his phone. The next morning, under Chin Ka's scheme, Yu Lan secretly stuffed the invitation into Yi Bai's exercise book. Unfortunately, she made a mistake and put it in Mu's notebook. When Mu opened the notebook and saw the invitation, he immediately stood in the middle of the class and loudly announced that Yu Lan was about to have a birthday. The whole class heard this and clamored for the invitation, leaving Yu Lan with no choice but to reluctantly nod in agreement. Then, Yi Bai agreed to help her prepare more invitations to give out to everyone. The next day, Yu Lan was overjoyed to see that she was ranked 20th in the class rankings. After class, she immediately ran to show off to Yi Bai, making him happy too. Because Yu Lan had completed the assigned task well, Yi Bai took her to the library and gave her a comic book that she had long loved. When he learned that Yu Lan's birthday was coming, Yi Bai planned to give her a cherry cake. However, Yu Lan refused, saying that her mother had already bought her one. Meanwhile, after school, Hao Tian immediately ran to his brother's garage to help with the chores, hoping to get an advance on his salary to buy Yu Lan a birthday present. Thinking about buying a present, Hao Tian worked even harder. At the same time, Yi Bai also went to the store to buy decorative lights to prepare for Yu Lan's birthday. That night, Yu Lan lay in bed, happily texting Yi Bai that she would soon see her mother again. In the kitchen, her grandmother was wrapping dumplings while smiling brightly because her daughter had not been home for a long time, although she was looking forward to it. At this moment, Yu Lan's mother called to inform her that she could not return due to something busy. During the call, she sadly blamed her daughter for not coming back to visit her and Yu Lan for 2 years. When she heard that her mother could not return, Yu Lan was extremely sad. She tried to hold back her tears and ran to comfort her grandmother. That night, the two of them made dumplings together, watched TV together, and celebrated the new year in a warm and happy atmosphere. The next morning, her grandmother prepared a lot of sweets to welcome Yu Lan's classmates. Meanwhile, even though she couldn't go home, Yu Lan's mother still sent her daughter a cherry cake as promised. When her classmates came to her birthday party, everyone gave Yu Lan many gifts. A curious boy asked about Yu Lan's parents, making the whole group feel worried. Everyone was afraid that Yu Lan would be sad, so they interrupted his curiosity. Soon after, everyone happily played tag together. However, while the group was playing, a classmate accidentally broke the cake that Yu Lan's mother had sent. Yu Lan felt sad when she saw this. Yi Bai was worried and immediately ran to buy her another cake. However, the store had run out of cherry cake. The chef suggested changing to another fruit, but Yi Bai refused. In the end, because there was no other way, Yi Bai had to run to buy fresh cherries and ask the chef to make a new cake for Yu Lan. In the evening, when Hao Tian came to celebrate Yu Lan's birthday, Yi Bai returned with the cake. However, when he saw everyone in the house happily singing happy birthday, he quietly left the cake and the prepared gift outside the door and left. It was late at night when Yu Lan went out that she saw Yi Bai's gift. She happily brought them into the room, looking at the cake and the gift that Yi Bai had worked hard to prepare for her. The next day, the group made an appointment to go to the park to play. However, Yu Lan's grandmother was sick, so she couldn't join. At the same time, Jinka also had problems with her sister, so she had to let the 4 boys go out by themselves. In the end, the 4 boys went to play games to relieve their mood. That afternoon, Jinka went to the basketball court to find her male god Fang. While waiting, she felt nervous and extremely excited. Soon after, a group of teenagers appeared and wanted to chase Chin Ka away to take over the basketball court. However, she resolutely refused to give in to those teenagers. When the group of teenagers was about to commit a violent act, Fang appeared in time, making them all angry and leave. After that, Fang specially instructed Chin Ka on how to play basketball, making her feel extremely excited and happy. The next day, Chin Ka enthusiastically went to the noodle shop for lunch. Unexpectedly, she accidentally encountered the group of hooligans who had bullied the 2 girls before. Those people clearly showed their intention to settle their grudge with Hao Tian, so they held the 2 girls back. At the same time, a male friend in the group quickly ran to inform Hao Tian. He also did not forget to emphasize that this situation was very urgent. As soon as he received the news, the 2 guys rushed to the noodle shop. On the way, Yi Bai accidentally saw Xue Er being bullied by a group of girls, so he quickly ran over to stop them. Meanwhile, at the noodle shop, a man wearing sunglasses suddenly appeared. His cold aura scared the 2 girls to the point of trembling. Yu Lan was so panicked that she dropped her phone. The fat guy in the group saw this and picked it up. Hao Tian appeared in time. He forcefully pressed the fat guy against the wall, forcing him to return the phone to Yu Lan. At that moment, the man wearing sunglasses suddenly spoke up. He expressed his gratitude to Hao Tian for previously discovering the fault in his car. Thanks to that discovery, Hao Tian accidentally saved his life and he was extremely grateful. Then the man bluntly scolded his juniors for daring to make things difficult for Hao Tian and his his friends. He made his juniors bow their heads and apologize to Hao Tian, then immediately dragged them out of the shop. On the way back, the group accidentally saw Yi Bai sitting next to Xue Er, comforting her. Yulan looked at that scene and suddenly felt a mixture of surprise and sadness. Until that night, Yulan was still in a heavy mood because she did not understand why Yi Bai did not appear to save her. The next morning, when Yi Bai was about to explain to Yulan, Hao Tian suddenly ran over and stopped him on the way home. At that time, countless unanswered questions still appeared in Yulan's mind. In the afternoon, Yulan accidentally saw Xue Er being bullied by a group of girls again. This time, Yulan took the initiative to take a video camera to record, then used the footage as evidence to threaten, scaring the girls into leaving. That night, Xue Er confided in Yulan. She said that the reason she admired Yi Bai was because every time Xue Er was bullied, Yi Bai would appear in time to rescue her. After Yulan heard this, she felt both sad and embarrassed. The next day, Qinka excitedly showed Yulan that she had just had a very interesting date with the male god Fan. Mu, who was always smiling and cheerful, accidentally overheard this and felt a little sad. From then on, Mu began to show displeasure towards Qinka, making the whole group confused because they did not understand what was going on. When it was time to practice, Mu suddenly remembered what Qinka had said. He felt frustrated and left halfway through without practicing anymore. Meanwhile, Yulan kept thinking about Yi Bai's rejection of her feelings. She was wondering how to confess to him. The next day, Yulan decided to wait for Yi Bai in front of the restroom. When she saw him, she took the initiative to return Yi Bai's exercise book. Yulan shyly took out a bookmark and gave it to Yi Bai. When she saw that him had nothing more to say, she awkwardly walked away. At the same time, Dujan suddenly scared Yulan, causing her to panic. While cleaning, a classmate accidentally wet Yi Bai's notebook. However, he didn't pay much attention to the notebook but was only worried about the bookmark that Yulan had just given him. Yi Bai carefully clipped the gift into the comic book to protect it from getting wet. After that, he and Yulan left together. When the two of them walked under a tree in the schoolyard, Yulan quietly asked if Yi Bai had anything to say to her. Yi Bai didn't answer right away, but gently picked up a leaf that had fallen on her face. That action made Yulan blush, so embarrassed that she could no longer hear what Yi Bai was about to say. When he got home, Yi Bai hugged the bookmark tightly in his hand, looking at it and feeling a sweet happiness. During class the next day, Yulan was busy laughing foolishly, her mood filled with excitement at the thought of waiting for Yi Bai after school. However, when it was already late, the homeroom teacher saw her still lingering in the classroom and immediately sent her home. While walking in the hallway, Mu suddenly ran over and told Yulan that Qinka's male god Fang had a girlfriend. The news was like a thunderbolt that shocked Yulan. She immediately called Qinka to inform her, but she couldn't get through. Finally, Yulan and Mu decided to run to the gym together to find Qinka. On the way, Yulan accidentally passed by Yi Bai's physics review room. She stopped, stood blankly in front of the door and looked inside. The scene before her eyes left her speechless. Xue Er was standing in front of Yi Bai, confessing her feelings to him. Yulan couldn't believe her eyes. In the practice room, the atmosphere became tense as everyone's emotions were in turmoil. Qinka ran towards Fan, intending to dance to express her sincere feelings. However, before Qinka could finish her sentence, Fan coldly refused. Mu, who had been standing by and witnessed the whole thing, immediately approached Fan, intending to teach him a lesson. However, Qinka quickly stopped him. In deep sadness, she turned her back and walked away, despite Mu's efforts to hold her back. In another corner, Yulan was also falling into an emotional slump. She sat quietly, her eyes red, her hands trembling as she held the card she had written for Yi Bai, but had never had the chance to give it to him. The next day, the two girls went to class sadly and were not in the mood to study. During class, the teacher lectured about love and relationships during school years, making their moods even heavier. After class, when the two were sitting in the schoolyard, they suddenly saw Fang and the girl he liked walking by. At this moment, Qinka felt so sad that she could not speak. Right after that, Yulan tried to pull herself out of the gloomy atmosphere and walked towards the classroom. When she entered the classroom, she caught sight of Xue Er giving Yi Bai a box of yogurt. Seeing this, Yulan felt disappointed again, as if sadness was weighing down on her heart. So both Yulan and Qinka spent a morning absent-minded in a depressed mood. Then, when Yulan went to the library, she accidentally met Yi Bai again. She quickly turned around to avoid him because she knew clearly that she was upset about what happened between her and Xue Er in physics class. Yi Bai originally wanted to go forward to explain, but before he could open his mouth, Hao Tian ran over, interrupting the conversation. So Yi Bai had no choice but to quietly leave. In the next class, Yi Yi Bai saw Hao Tian passing a piece of paper to Yulan to chat. A little jealousy suddenly rose in his heart. Later, after class, Yulan went to Yi Bai to get back the piece of paper that she had forgotten in her exercise book. However, Yi Bai suddenly became angry, and the anger that flared up in his heart was something he could not control. In fact, Yulan was a student who did not pay much attention to studying. She was only absorbed in her own personal matters. When he stood up to leave, Yulan wanted to explain everything to Yi Bai. Unfortunately, she accidentally bumped into the desk, causing Yi Bai's hourglass to break. Yulan immediately bent down to pick up the broken pieces, but Yi Bai stopped her. He cleaned up the broken pieces himself, worried that she might get hurt, although Yulan felt extremely guilty about this incident. At that moment, the teacher called her to the office. With no other choice, Yulan apologized to Yi Bai and hurriedly left. When they arrived at the office, the teacher reminded Yulan about her study situation. Coincidentally, Hao Tian was also called by the teacher for the same reason. When he saw Yulan sadly walking out of the office, Hao Tian quickly chased after her. Then the two stood outside in the hallway and complained about their poor study results together. During the conversation, Hao Tian expressed his intention to ask Yulan to go out on the weekend. At first, she flatly refused. However, after Hao Tian's patient persuasion, Yulan finally wavered a little. Meanwhile, Yi Bai originally intended to ask Yulan to go to tutoring classes on the weekend, but before she could even reply, Hao Tian quickly declined for her. Seeing this situation, Yi Bai had no choice but to swallow his invitation and not say anything more. When Yi Bai suggested asking Xue Er to go to tutoring classes, Yulan suddenly felt a sky of jealousy rising in her heart. On the weekend, Hao Tian took the initiative to pick up Yulan at the garage where he worked and patiently taught her how to ride an ATV. All afternoon, on the other side, Yi Bai held 2 concert tickets with him, hoping to invite Yulan to go with him. However, Yi Bai accidentally heard Yulan's grandmother say that her granddaughter was picked up by a classmate. Hearing this, he could only stand there, dumbfounded, unable to say another word. After a day of walking around the city with Hao Tian, Yulan's mood gradually became more comfortable. At night, Yi Bai still patiently stood in front of the house waiting for her. When he saw Yulan being brought home by Hao Tian with a bright smile on her face, Yi Bai could only stand quietly to the side. After Yulan walked upstairs, Yi Bai immediately called Hao Tian to a corner to talk. Soon after, the two men had a tense argument. After Hao Tian's decisive words, Yi Bai felt that he had nothing more to argue with, so he just stood there silently and let Hao Tian turn and leave. When he returned home, those words still echoed in Yi Bai's ears, making him so angry that he unconsciously clenched his fists as if he wanted to vent his anger on someone. The next morning, Yi Bai saw himself and Xue Er wiping the blackboard. Meanwhile, Yulan's mood became empty, without any emotions. Seeing this, Hao Tian took the initiative to take her out for a snack to help her avoid the heartbreaking scene. However, when the two returned, Yulan accidentally overheard the conversation between Yi Bai and Xue Er. At this time, she heard Yi Bai say that he intended to study abroad in England. This information shocked Yulan to the point of disbelief. That night, she sat alone and cried for a long time in the quiet room. The next day, Yulan complained about her love life to Qinka. At that moment, the two of them unexpectedly met Fang and his girlfriend. When he saw Fang saying goodbye to his girlfriend, Qinka suddenly felt a glimmer of hope. Then, Qinka took the initiative to ask Fang out and gave him a portion of food, which he could not refuse, even if he wanted to. At lunchtime, Yi Bai suddenly walked over and sat right in front of Yulan. Hao Tian immediately picked up a piece of meat for Yulan. However, Yulan did not like fatty meat, so he passed it to Qinka. When Qinka shyly returned it, Yulan immediately picked up the portion for Yi Bai, which made him stunned. Yulan hurriedly explained that since Yi Bai was about to take an exam, she just wanted to nourish him. Hao Tian sat next to him and did not forget to tease that Yi Bai was about to eat beefsteak in England, so he definitely did not have any desire for these ordinary dishes. Hearing this, Yi Bai immediately replied that no matter where he went, he still thought that the stir-fried ribs cooked by Yulan's grandmother were the best. This compliment made Hao Tian uncomfortable and immediately took back the piece of meat. In the end, Yulan could only sit there sadly, her eyes unconsciously following Yi Bai's retreating back. During gym class, Hao Tian continued to provoke Yi Bai. Yi Bai agreed to participate in a solo basketball game. The two of them rushed at each other like tigers pouncing on their prey. During the struggle, Hao Tian accidentally pushed Yi Bai, causing him to fall down and sprain his ankle. Everyone panicked and wanted to help Yi Bai to the infirmary, but he firmly shook his head and refused. With no other choice, Yulan hurried to the infirmary to ask for medicine for Yi Bai. However, not only did she not get the medicine, but she also clumsily bumped her head into the door, causing her forehead head to swell and turn red. A while later, when Yi Bai returned to the classroom and saw the medicine on the table, he immediately guessed that it was brought by Yulan. He took the initiative to thank her, causing Yulan to feel warm in her heart because of this small matter, and her smile gradually returned. At recess, Fang took the initiative to find Chinka. Not only did he give her a thick stack of study materials, but he also showed special care. Chinka was overjoyed, especially when Fang asked her to write a yearbook for her. Chinka and Yulan then sat on the green grass to write the yearbook. The two girls, after long days of sadness, were now happy and loved life again. After the exam, the whole class had to gather outside the schoolyard. Suddenly, it started to rain heavily, and everyone rushed into the auditorium. While everyone was rushing to find shelter, Yulan stood there, absent-mindedly watching the rain, making the scene both silly and adorable. When the meeting ended, Hao Tian quickly pulled Yulan away. Yi Bai also wanted to run after her, but because he was busy with homework, he had to miss it. Yulan and Hao Tian sat under the awning of the bus stop, waiting for the bus while happily watching the rain. Just as Yi Bai arrived, the bus had just stopped. He could only stand from afar, quietly watching the two people get on the bus. With a look of disappointment in his eyes, Yi Bai stood blankly by the roadside. On the other side, Yulan also felt regretful. In another place, Chinka quietly entered the gym to say goodbye to Fang before he left this place to return home. While Yulan was still thinking about Yi Bai, she suddenly received a call. Yi Bai wanted to meet her to give her study materials and talk a few words before the exam. Hearing this, Yulan quickly agreed and ran away so fast that she forgot to bring her umbrella. Yi Bai arrived at the meeting place and waited patiently, but there was still no sign of Yulan. It turned out that the silly girl had gone to the wrong address. Not only that, Yulan's phone fell into the water, making it impossible for her to contact Yi Bai. It was really bad luck on top of bad luck. On this side, Yi Bai waited for a long time but still did not see Yulan appear. When he called, she did not pick up. Thinking that Yulan had gone to the library in front of the school gate, Yi Bai ran there at full speed, but unfortunately he was a step too late, and the two of them just passed each other without being able to meet. During the vacation before Yi Bai's exam, Yulan stayed home all day, teaching her neighbor's younger brother to study. Sometimes, in the quiet moments, Yulan would think of Yi Bai, the boy who was wandering far away in the west. Seeing that her granddaughter was on vacation for a long time and was just hanging around the house, her grandmother immediately advised Yulan to go out and play to clear her mind. Listening to Mrs. Yulan, she invited Hao Tian to go to the mall for a walk. Here, when she accidentally saw her mother's figure in front of her, Yulan immediately avoided her and did not dare to face her. After knowing that the woman was Yulan's mother, Hao Tian immediately wondered why she did not want to meet her. He advised Yulan to go find her mother to talk, but she just shook her head, because in fact she did not know her mother's home address. With his quick wit, Hao Tian pretended to be a clever shipper who remembered the address of Yulan's mother's home, who said she was living abroad. Meanwhile, Yi Bai was still extremely happy every time he saw Yulan's messages. He texted her every day to ask about her. On the contrary, back home, Yulan was so foolish that she secretly hoped that Yi Bai would fail the exam so that she would have to return to study with him. The next day, Hao Tian drove his brother's car and took Yulan to the address he found. However, when they arrived, they both realized that it was a wrong address and were even scolded. While Yulan was confused and about to return, she suddenly saw her mother happily walking with her new family. That moment made Yulan not dare to face it. She could only quietly hide behind Hao Tian, her sad eyes watching her mother's figure gradually move away. To comfort Yulan, Hao Tian took her to see her father. The two stood there talking for a long time, sharing many things, until evening when they returned. When he stopped in front of Yulan's house, Hao Tian mustered up all his courage to ask if there was room for Yi Bai in her heart. Yulan didn't hesitate at all, and frankly shared the reason why she liked Yi Bai. That sincere confession left Hao Tian stunned. In the end, he could only bitterly accept that he was the one who came later. He stood there sadly watching Yulan's back disappear through the door. When he went to faraway England, Yi Bai still studied very hard. Every time he saw Yulan's silhouette faintly on the pages of his book, he would suddenly think of her. Then, in a moment of weakness, Yi Bai erased his exam paper. Soon after, Du Jiang suddenly announced to the group that Yi Bai would be returning to China. He also wanted everyone to hold a party to welcome Yi Bai, which was also a farewell party because he was about to transfer schools. Upon hearing this news, Yulan immediately felt sad for the whole long evening. The next morning, Yulan called Chinka to confide in her. Hearing this, Chinka gently comforted her and advised her to dress up to make Yi Bai fall in love. Then Yulan went to the mall and personally bought a watch as a gift for Yi Bai. In the evening, the group was busy preparing for the welcome party for Yi Bai. When he saw everyone enthusiastic enthusiastically waiting, Yi-bai was also very surprised and moved. After eating and drinking to his heart's content, the atmosphere at the party became more lively and warm than ever. With the enthusiastic cheers of his friends, Yi-bai sang a song full of aura for everyone. True to the main character, Yi-bai's sweet and attractive voice captivated the group. Immediately after, Hao Tian also wanted to join in the fun with a song, but when he sang, the group only reluctantly praised him perfunctorily. At the end of the party, everyone said goodbye to Yi-bai one by one and hurriedly left, leaving him and Yulan some private space. On the way back, Yulan accidentally dropped the gift bag. When she bent down to pick it up, her little head almost hit the front of the car. Fortunately, Yi-bai pulled her back in time. He worriedly scolded Yulan and sternly reminded her that she had to pay attention to safety from now on. Yi-bai then gave Yulan a box of facial masks, which made her extremely happy. On the way home, Yulan was both shy and curious when it came to the relationship between him and Xue Er. Yi-bai firmly affirmed that the two of them were just friends. This firm answer made Yulan extremely happy and at the same time cleared up the misunderstanding that had been in her heart for so long. When she got home, Yulan was so happy that she rolled all over the bed and fell to the ground, causing herself a slight injury. After the summer vacation, all the students entered the final year together. However, Yulan was still bewildered because the class now lacked Yi-bai. During math class, her mind was so absent that the teacher called her to the board to do the exercise. As a result, Yulan did it completely wrong, and her handwriting was bad, making the teacher extremely angry. At that moment, Yi-bai suddenly appeared. Yulan immediately felt excited when she saw him. The whole class was equally surprised. Thanks to that appearance, Yulan seemed to be given more strength, quickly completing the unfinished math problem. At recess, she asked Chin-ka to follow her to the office to listen to the news. However, Chin-ka was so scared that he left Yulan and quickly ran away. After being encouraged by the homeroom teacher, Yi-bai immediately left. Yulan was lurking behind the door. When she saw Yi-bai coming out, she was scared and retreated. Finally, the two sat under the cool shade of a tree to confide in each other. Although Yi-bai had firmly stated that he would not go to England, Yulan still could not believe it immediately. However, the truth was now clear as day. On the surface, Yulan kept comforting Yi-bai, but in her heart, she was as happy as if she had just found a treasure. Yulan felt happy when she learned that Yi-bai had failed the exam. Then she returned to the classroom, where Teacher Cho called each student to the office one by one to arrange new seats. When it was her turn, Yulan was extremely surprised because the homeroom teacher decided to let her sit with Yi-bai. The teacher made this decision because Yi-bai himself had suggested it, and she also noticed that Yulan had made obvious progress when studying with him. Yulan was so stunned that she couldn't believe her ears. Seeing that attitude, Teacher Cho thought that Yulan didn't like this decision, causing Yulan to hastily agree. Previously, Yulan had declared that she would never leave Chin-ka, but now she changed her mind as quickly as turning a page in a book. In the end, Yulan could only say goodbye to Chin-ka. Yulan's move to sit next to Yi-bai made Chin-ka feel extremely resentful, so Chin-ka went to Yi-bai and coldly threatened that he must treat Yulan well so that she could complete her college application. At this time, the whole class had to submit their ID cards to the class president. Yulan felt embarrassed because the photo on her ID card was too naive, so she decided to put a sticker over her face before submitting it to Yi-bai. When Yi-bai wanted to confirm it, Yulan was startled, accidentally letting Chu see something that shouldn't have been seen. Sitting above, Dujang quickly grabbed Yulan's ID card, looked at it carefully, and burst out laughing, making her so angry that she wanted to vomit blood. When it was time for class, seeing Yulan sad, Yi-bai gently promised that if she got a high score in the upcoming math exam, he would show her his ID card. Hearing this, Yulan immediately regained her determination, but in the end, she was still 2 points short of the required score. However, Yi-bai kept his promise and showed her his ID card, making Yulan so happy that she couldn't stop looking at it. After school, Yulan asked Chin-ka to go buy flowers for Yi-bai's birthday. However, she insisted on choosing a bouquet that was a little wilted. At home, Yi-bai cooked for his father as usual. When he happened to see 2 movie tickets on the table, he immediately asked for them. At first, Yi-bai's father did not agree, but when he heard that he wanted to go to the movies with Yulan, he happily nodded without thinking further. That night, Yulan prepared a bracelet with a stone face that was exactly the same as the necklace she was wearing, intending to give it to Yi-bai the next day. In her heart, she was eager to celebrate her birthday with him, but Yi-bai refused because she had to participate in a competition. At first, Yulan had intended to invite Yi-bai to watch the new movie. However, because she was shy, she did not dare to say anything after class. Unexpectedly, Yi-bai took the initiative to put the movie ticket in Yulan's notebook. book and invited her to go with him. This was also an opportunity for Yulan to celebrate his birthday early. On the way back, Yulan excitedly told Chinka about this, making her admire him very much. While chatting, Yulan suddenly realized that time was running out. After a hasty wrap, she said goodbye to Chinka and went home to prepare. However, just as Yulan was about to go to the movies, her grandmother suddenly fainted. She hurriedly called an ambulance to take her grandmother to the hospital. Meanwhile, Yi Bai was still standing in front of the cinema, patiently waiting for a long time without seeing Yulan appear. Yi Bai heard that her grandmother had fainted. He immediately rushed to the hospital to take care of her grandmother with Yulan. The two stayed until the next morning. Only when her grandmother woke up did Yi Bai feel at ease to leave. At that moment, Yulan discovered that Yi Bai had forgotten his exam card. With no other choice, she had to bring the card to the city for him. On the way, the car had an accident and had to stop. At that moment, a truck passed by, and Yulan was forced to ask for a ride to make it on time. Yulan finally arrived at the exam site and handed the card to Yi Bai. However, Yi Bai was still able to enter the exam room normally without the card, making Yulan's hard work almost in vain. Even so, she still sat down to wait for Yi Bai in the schoolyard. Because she was tired and had no money to go home, Yulan fell asleep on the stone bench. After the exam, Yi Bai immediately woke Yulan up and took her out to eat to thank her. Yulan was very happy, even asking to go sightseeing at Haibetro because she realized that Yi Bai often indulged her easily. She also wanted to experience the giant Ferris wheel, which she had seen before when she was with Hao Tian but had never tried. Yi Bai heard that and immediately agreed enthusiastically. With just a few naive, flattering words, Yulan successfully made Yi Bai take her up the giant Ferris wheel. Here, Yulan took out the bracelet that she had prepared and gave it to Yi Bai, making him extremely happy. Meanwhile, at school, the school held a young talent competition. Chinka also participated and made it to the next round. After receiving the results, she happily showed them off to Yulan and asked her to help her find more fans. That afternoon, Yi Bai was at home when she suddenly received a call from Mu. The guy was so excited that he reported that Yulan and Chinka were doing something shady in the square. After hearing this, Yi Bai still didn't understand what was going on when Mu dragged him to see for himself. When he arrived, Yi Bai realized that Yulan was just helping Chinka realize his dream of becoming a street singer. Seeing the two of them coming, Yulan happily pulled Yi Bai and Mu to join them, singing together in the bustling atmosphere. That night, the square was filled with singing and laughter. However, when Chinka's father found out, he got angry and scolded his daughter. Chinka went upstairs in frustration, crying and calling Yulan. Yulan advised her friend to ask Mu to convince her father because she believed that Mu's words would work. Hearing this, Chinka had no choice but to call Mu for help. Sure enough, after listening to Mu's analysis and advice, Chinka's father gradually calmed down and finally agreed to let his daughter pursue her passion. The next morning, Chinka happily shared the good news with the whole class. Receiving congratulations from her friends, she felt like she had succeeded halfway. Meanwhile, Yi Bai went to the library to find Yulan. Among the quiet bookshelves, the two sat and chatted with each other. The distance gradually shortened, making Yulan realize that Yi Bai did not talk much, but his eyes made her heart beat faster. Outside the schoolyard, Chinka was still diligently practicing for the upcoming competition. The day of the talent show finally arrived. Although she was not selected for the next round, thanks to Mu's comfort, Chinka did not give up. It was her burning passion that helped her become more determined. The next day, Yulan saw Chinka studying hard while pursuing her dream. As for herself, she did not have any clear goals. Realizing that, Yi Bai immediately took out 2 tickets to the convention and said that this would be the goal for Yulan to strive for. Thanks to that, Yulan felt like she was given more motivation. At Chinka's house, her father was extremely happy to see his daughter change, working harder than before. That night, the whole family had so much fun that they drank a little too much, making Mu drunk. Chinka had to help him up to the room to rest, but unexpectedly, Mu jumped up, confessed that he would always be there to support Chinka, then gently kissed her forehead. Surprised, Chinka reacted with a slap, causing Mu to fall unconscious and snore like thunder. While she was both shocked and confused, that night, the scene was so haunting that Chinka even brought it into his dreams. The next day at class, she was still angry and deliberately ignored Mu, leaving him clueless about what was going on. Meanwhile, Yulan excitedly boasted that Yi Bai had given her a study goal, but then she discovered that the concert ticket had long expired. Seeing Yulan disappointed, Yi Bai took out 2 new tickets and encouraged her to continue working hard. That day, Yi Bai invited Yulan and Chinka to go to the cafe together for tutoring. Just as the 3 were about to leave, Hao Tian suddenly appeared and expressed his desire to join. Yulan immediately pulled Qin-ka to sit next to Dujan, while the others were also interested and wanted to go along for fun. In the end, Yi Bai could only force a smile and agree. He originally thought he would have a chance to date the girl of his dreams, but unexpectedly, a few other male friends interrupted, making him feel really unlucky. In the cafe, Qin-ka sat in a daze when she discovered that Mu was being friendly with a female classmate. She thought to herself that girls were the most confusing creatures on the planet. The next day, after the soccer match ended, Mu walked towards his class. As usual, he intended to take the bottle of water that Qin-ka had prepared. However, when another female classmate brought water, Mei returned the bottle of water to Qin-ka. This action made Qin-ka angry. She immediately left without saying a word. That night, Qin-ka was still as angry as an owl. She looked for Yulan to confide in her. After listening to Qin-ka's confession, Yulan realized that her friend had fallen in love with Mu. The embarrassment made Qin-ka blush, and she quickly left to hide her feelings. The next morning, Qin-ka still kept a sulky expression every time she thought of Mu. Just when she was still resentful, Mu suddenly appeared, forcing her to pretend to be cold. He simply brought the book back to Qin-ka, then naively asked that he did not understand what he had done wrong to anger her. Qin-ka was like an owl, bluntly chasing Mu away. Mu, who was usually gentle, saw this and silently turned around and left, leaving Qin-ka mad with anger. In the afternoon, when Mu was about to climb through the window to get into Qin-ka's room, she was so startled that she threw a potted plant down, causing him to fall to the ground. Realizing that she had gone too far, Qin-ka quickly ran down to help him up and treat his wound. Seeing her eyes filled with tears from worry, Mu gently comforted her. Afterwards, the two sat in the park to chat. Qin-ka hesitantly asked about the relationship between Mu and the female student. After listening to his clear explanation, she still couldn't help but feel a little jealous. Mu was usually stingy, but today he was generous enough to give money to another girl. Only then did Qin-ka learn that Mu's father had given him money to buy new shoes, but the amount wasn't enough. That's why Mu had a little left over to help the other girl. The next morning when he arrived at class, Mu saw the new shoes in the desk drawer and immediately guessed who had given them to him. He ran to thank Qin-ka, and the two happily chatted as if they had never had a quarrel before. Meanwhile, Hao Tian secretly wrote a letter inviting Yulan to attend extra classes after school. However, Yulan carelessly showed the letter to Yi Bai. This time, Yi Bai didn't want any obstacles, so he told Yulan to refuse Hao Tian's invitation. After school, the two waited for each other at the bus stop and went to the coffee shop to study together. The atmosphere had just become romantic when Yi Bai suddenly discovered that Yulan had mistakenly drunk his cup of water. The two were so embarrassed that they didn't dare to look each other in the eye. On the bus ride back, the car suddenly braked, almost touching their lips. Both of them blushed immediately and quickly turned away, not knowing where to hide their embarrassment. The next morning, Qin-ka was so nervous that he was restless because of the upcoming match. While Mu's leg had not yet fully healed, Mu gently comforted him that his leg was fine to ease Qin-ka's anxiety. When the competition day officially began, Mu was suddenly hit by an opponent and fell to the ground. Qin-ka was extremely panicked and kept blaming herself, thinking that it was because of her that Mu was in this situation. Seeing Mu's pain, she felt even more heartbroken. Although Mu still fought hard and was determined to win the gold medal, the result was not as expected. He was forced to leave the field in regret, while Qin-ka could only torment himself, thinking that it was because of him that Mu missed out on victory. On the way back, Qin-ka still bowed his head in self-reproach. At that time, Mu smiled to reassure her and gently held Qin-ka's hand. The two of them quietly returned together. On another day of the competition, a classmate accidentally dropped a cheat sheet on the ground. Unfortunately, the paper fell right next to Hao Tian, causing the exam supervisor to misunderstand and continuously scold him. Despite the homeroom teacher's best efforts to explain, the exam supervisor still maintained a harsh attitude. After being criticized in front of the whole school, Hao Tian angrily went to find the homeroom teacher to explain, but the teacher did not listen at all. In his anger, he announced that he would quit school and packed up his books and left. Yulan panicked and ran after him to advise him, but Hao Tian did not pay any attention to her words. In class, everyone was gossiping and suspicious about Hao Tian's situation, but did not know how to resolve it. Meanwhile, Hao Tian was at home, helping his brother fix his car. At that time, his brother coincidentally introduced him to a newly established car club. Hao Tian had great dreams and aspirations. 3 days had passed, and he had not returned to school, making the whole group of friends extremely worried. In this situation, Yi Bai quickly thought of a way to find the truth. He suggested that the group distract the security guard and sneak into the surveillance room to review the video from that day. At this moment, the homeroom teacher suddenly appeared and caught the group red-handed on the spot. With no other choice, the group had to accept the punishment of running around around the schoolyard. After returning to class, Yi-bai was called to the office by the homeroom teacher, which made him a little confused. When Yi-bai returned to class, the school issued a public apology to Hao Tian. The news quickly spread throughout the school, causing all the students to breathe a sigh of relief because they had finally cleared Hao Tian's name. When she got home, Yulan immediately called Hao Tian, trying to persuade him to return to class. However, the next morning, Hao Tian still did not come to school. Yulan began to worry, so she asked Yi-bai to go look for him together. While preparing, Yulan also drew a map, but the drawing was so clumsy that Yi-bai did not know what kind of compliments to use. That afternoon, Yi-bai and Yulan went to the garage to see Hao Tian, earnestly urging him to return to school. However, Hao Tian firmly refused. No matter how much they talked, his attitude did not change. In the end, Yulan was helpless and could only leave angrily. When she got home, she texted Hao Tian to meet her at the jogging track. When Hao Tian arrived, Yulan issued a challenge. The two had to run around the gym, the race only ending when one of them could not run anymore. After some persistence, Hao Tian, despite his handsome but physically weak body, had to give up. As promised, he was forced to return to school. When Hao Tian went to get the car, he unexpectedly ran into Yi-bai, who had been waiting there since the afternoon. Hao Tian didn't understand why Yi-bai was there. When he should have been in class at this time, Yi-bai just calmly replied that he came to tell Hao Tian that he had overestimated this rival. Previously, Yi-bai thought Hao Tian was a formidable rival, but the reality was completely different. Hearing these sarcasm, Hao Tian was both confused and annoyed. He began to fear that he would lose to Yi-bai again in the upcoming exam. While the group of friends were still worried because Hao Tian hadn't returned to class, he suddenly appeared, shocking everyone. The atmosphere in the classroom became much more lively. That very day, the teacher announced that the class would be divided into small groups to review for the exam in the next 3 months. This news fell like a thunderbolt, causing the whole class to protest. Yulan couldn't accept the prospect of being separated from her friends. Her eyes flashed with confusion. Seeing this, Yi-bai gently reassured her that he would tutor her on the weekend. As soon as she finished speaking, the teacher poured cold water on Yi-bai and Yulan when she announced that there would be no days off during the exam review period. This meant that the two of them would no longer have time to study together. Not being placed in the same class as Yi-bai made it difficult for Yulan to concentrate. Her mind was always in turmoil. Yulan's new class was like a New Year's market. On the podium, the teacher was as strict as an owl. His scoldings fell on the whole class like water splashed on their faces. In the following days, Yulan and her friends gradually focused more on studying. However, missing little Yulan made Yi-bai unable to bear it. He brought snacks to her classroom door. That action made the whole class extremely jealous. That night, when she saw that her study results were not as expected, Yulan sat sadly. At this moment, Yi-bai called to comfort her, encouraging her to try harder in the next exam. The next day after math class, everything continued. During the 10-minute break, Yulan was about to run to find Yi-bai when the teacher stopped her, asking her to collect the class's exercise books. Seeing two classmates about to go out, Yulan immediately called them back, asking them to hand in their work first and then go wherever they wanted. One of them refused because she had not finished. However, Yulan still insisted on collecting all the notebooks. The other girl was about to leave Yulan alone when Chinka appeared and spoke up to defend her friend. No one would give in. The atmosphere gradually became tense. In the end, all three were punished by the teacher to stand in the corner of the classroom. The next day, the group was angry because the students of the day class were bullying Mu and Hao Tian. They planned to go there to teach them a lesson, but were stopped by Chinka. Normally, Yulan was a talkative girl, but today she was in a bad mood, just sitting there quietly, not saying anything. Then she made an excuse to leave. Seeing this, Chinka realized that something was wrong with Yulan, so he asked Yi-bai to go and advise her. Knowing that the school would have a power outage tomorrow, Yi-bai asked Yulan to sneak out to play. When the school's power went out, Yulan sneaked out with Yi-bai to watch the meteor shower. The two had only talked for a while when the power was restored. Yi-bai had not yet finished saying what he wanted, so he finally gave Yulan the study materials and quietly left. The next day, Yulan went to the office and asked the subject teacher to let her take a day off to take her grandmother to the gynecologist. The teacher almost choked on his water after hearing this because he was so surprised. When the teacher asked again to make sure, Yulan realized that she had said the wrong thing. She immediately changed the reason for her absence to taking her grandmother to the doctor's office for a follow-up visit. When Yulan left the office, Yi-bai and Hao Tian were already waiting for her outside. Both of them wanted to go together to show off their future son-in-law's appearance, but Yulan refused outright because she didn't want to choose anyone. Seeing the two of them coincidentally accidentally standing in front of the office door, Yulan felt a little suspicious. The two young men quickly made up an excuse to fool her naivety. The next afternoon, while taking her grandmother to the hospital, Yulan unexpectedly discovered that the homeroom teacher was also there. After the announcement, the whole group decided to visit the teacher. Seeing him, they were endlessly grateful and encouraged him. They reminded him that his students must try their best for the upcoming exam. The whole class was also somewhat relieved to know that the teacher's health had stabilized after a period of intense studying. Everyone returned to the old classroom. While the whole class was exhausted, Hao Tian unexpectedly gave the whole class a box of instant noodles to nourish Yulan. Immediately, the students gathered around to beg for food. The atmosphere became bustling. However, the homeroom teacher suddenly appeared and scolded the whole class. After satisfying his anger, he let Yi Bai decide how to handle the class. After being punished, everyone returned to the classroom to write each other's yearbooks. Lan had not yet prepared the yearbook, so she had to let her classmates write directly on her shirt. The next day, Hao Tian specially asked the school loudspeaker to play a song for Yulan, but she was in the library so she didn't hear it. When she got back to class, Yulan found out and was teased by her classmates. She was still dumbfounded and didn't understand what had happened. In the following days, the whole class focused all their efforts on studying. During the last lessons, everyone looked sad because they were about to part. The teachers, who had been with the students for the past 3 years, couldn't hide their regret. On the day of the exam, everyone was well prepared. After finishing the exam, the whole class went to the schoolyard to celebrate having passed the most difficult exam in their student life. On the yard, the students played and threw water balloons and laughed loudly. When the results came out, Yi Bai immediately called Yulan to tell her the good news. She was so happy that she couldn't express it in words. Yi Bai also couldn't believe her own achievement. Yulan didn't forget to ask about his study plan, and when she learned that Yi Bai would continue studying in China, she jumped for joy. So Yulan had the opportunity to study with Yi Bai again. The next day, the whole class went to school to take a souvenir photo. Yulan saw that she and Hao Tian hadn't finished taking the photo yet, so Yi Bai angrily pulled her aside to take a photo alone. Hao Tian had no choice but to sit aside and just enjoy their love scene. Meanwhile, Chinka didn't see Mu anywhere, so he called him. Unexpectedly, Mu stood on the rooftop preparing a huge surprise for Chinka and boldly confessed to her. After being discovered by the homeroom teacher, Mu started playing tag with the teacher to avoid him. Yi Bai was being scolded by his mother for missing out on the opportunity to study abroad. Yulan happened to pass by and hid in a corner to eavesdrop. When she questioned Yi Bai, his mother angrily left for class because she did not understand why her son would give up his lifelong dream. Yulan began to doubt Yi Bai's decision. At this moment, Yi Bai's wallet fell to the ground. Yulan bent down to pick it up and accidentally saw a photo of Yi Bai and Jiao, who had donated his eyes to her. Only then did Yulan realize that Yi Bai was Jiao's brother. On the way home, Mui asked Qin Ka about her decision, making her shy and avoiding him. In the evening, when she returned home, Yulan was still sadly recalling the events of the afternoon. She thought about it endlessly, but still could not understand why Yi Bai gave up the opportunity to study abroad. The next evening, the whole class went to Chinka's house to celebrate. Here, everyone decided to play Truth or Dare to express their feelings. Mu was offered a drink by a female classmate, which made Chinka jealous. Yulan and another female classmate also offered Yi Bai a drink, but Yi Bai accepted the drink from the other female classmate instead of Yulan, which made her a little sad. Seeing that Yulan had drunk a lot, Yi Bai had no choice but to take her home. On the bus, Yulan cried and confided that she had seen the photo in Yi Bai's wallet. She then stood up to express her feelings, but because she was drunk, Yi Bai could only comfort her. In the end, he carried her all the way home. In her daze, Yulan looked at Yi Bai and couldn't stop laughing. The next morning, when Yulan woke up, she still couldn't believe that she had done something so shameful. Meanwhile, Yi Bai's father came in to remind his son to think seriously about his decision. Hearing this, Yi Bai fell into deep thought. The next day, he stood in front of the bus station waiting for Yulan, and the two of them went to the meeting place to picnic with everyone. When the group arrived at the campsite, Du Jiang was about to use a hammer to fix the broken table, but almost slipped, causing Yulan to almost get injured. Luckily, Yi Bai pulled her out of the danger zone in time, and Hao Tian also grabbed Du Jiang to prevent the accident. Later, when Yulan went to get firewood, Yi Bai also followed. He expressed his feelings and then took her to see the sky full of fireflies. Yulan tried to catch a firefly on Yi Bai's shoulder, and the two of them got close to each other. In that passionate moment, Yi Bai suddenly gave Yulan a passionate kiss. Both of them felt so happy that they were speechless. Meanwhile, Jinka saw that the two had not returned yet, so she got up to look for them. In the middle of the night, she was wandering alone in the forest when she suddenly met that Mu. Panicked, Jinka hugged him tightly, but when she calmed down, she immediately became angry and chased Mu everywhere. On the other side, Hao Tian sat alone, forcing a smile as he thought about the beautiful memories between him and Yu Lan over the past 3 years. Despite his best efforts, he still couldn't win her heart. That night, when Yu Lan and Yi Bai were talking, Yi Bai mentioned the story of the friend who gave her candy years ago. Yu Lan suddenly remembered and quickly confirmed it with him. It turned out that since childhood, the two of them were destined for each other. But because Yu Lan was too naive, she didn't realize it. In the end, she was grateful to see Yi Bai again. He kissed her forehead, and the two of them happily looked at each other for a long time. The movie ends here. Thank you for watching. Goodbye, and see you again.